Good day to everyone. I'm Julie Platt, the chair of Jewish Federation's Board of Trustees. Welcome once again to this latest in our series of webinars related to the new Israeli government. Today's call, which will focus on religion and state issues, is also brought to you by the Jewish Federations of North America, together with the Israel Democracy Institute. And let me just take this opportunity to once again offer a very big thanks to IDI for their great partnership on this webinar series and for everything they do. The agenda of Israel's new coalition government, as expressed in the coalition agreements, includes a number of issues and proposed changes which are of high interest to the North American Jewish community, especially those associated with religion and state. Of course, this is an area where federations have been highly involved for many years, especially through IREP, which is a coalition of nearly 30 federations working in partnership with grassroots Israeli organizations to increase awareness about and acceptance of diverse forms of Jewish practice. I'm pleased to report that IREP has already distributed over $2 million to Israeli NGOs since it was established in 2016. While earlier work focused on the issue of freedom of choice in marriage, IREP's scope now includes additional religious freedom and pluralism issues, some of which will be covered by our webinar today. This is an issue that is always developing in Israel. Just today, we've seen a proposal by the Shas party to introduce a law that would further curb the rights and practices of non-Orthodox Jews at the Kotel. And then shortly afterwards, Prime Minister Netanyahu announcing that he was opposed to the proposal and that he does not believe that the proposal will advance. I'd like to welcome to the webinar Dr. Gilad Malach, who is the director of the Israel Democracy Institute's Ultra-Orthodox in Israel program, as well as advocate Shlomit Ravitsky-Tourpaz, who is the director of IDI's Center for Shared Society. They are joined by Ofer Pavli, who is the director of the Israel office of our Chicago Federation, the Jewish United Fund of Metropolitan Chicago. I'll now hand it over to you, Ofer, and thank you.
Thank you, Julie, and welcome to everyone. Advocate Ravitsky-Tourpaz, Shlomit, can I begin with you? The media often refers to the new government as, quote unquote, the most religious and right-wing coalition that Israel has ever had. What does that actually mean for religion and state issues, and what changes do you think may be on the cards?
So hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today and for caring and partnering with us today and as well as always. Regarding your questions, first of all, this government has no balancing powers. What was often, it's not the first time, of course, there is a right-wing government. This is the situation for many years now, almost all the years during 1977. But this is a changed and unique situation where there are no balancing powers at all. Other than that, we're meeting this government where there are very deep feelings of discrimination and unequal treatment to the ultra-Orthodox people that are feeling this is their time, their right, also right-wing extremists that feel things were unfair to them, and now it's their turn to be, when they have the voice, they have the victory, and they should show everyone how is the right way to deal with the things. One more thing I would like to say before I will show the things, the actual changes we are standing in front, that I think the threat, the nowadays threat, is both against democracy and against Judaism. Because sometimes people are saying this is the win of Judaism and only the democracy is in threat. But I feel that the way I would like to see democracy and the way I would like to see Judaism, which has different options of identity, different ways to be a Jew, this is something that is threatened as well. So it's not the time that Jewishness gets the stage, while democracy is downstairs, but they are both threatened. I would like to share with you now just a few of the, it looks a lot, but it's only a few of the demands in the coalition agreements concerning our issues. So some of the demands concerned mostly the ultra-Orthodox and Orthodox communities. For example, the annulment of the kashrut reform, a substantial increase in subsidies for yeshiva students and related institutions, decisions concerning the elections for chief rabbi and chief rabbinate, constitutional status to Torah study, and changes in the rabbinical courts. Those things are planned to be changes inside the Haredi and Orthodox communities. Of course, as we know, when you take a lot of money and put it in one basket, so it's going to be missing in a different one. So of course, when we we take financial decisions, this has influence on everyone. But the goal of it for the leaders of the ultra-Orthodox and the religious Zionist parties are to make their life and their issues better, and their people, more welfare for their people. The second column here is about the demands that are intentionally wants to influence all the public sphere and the education. And again, a few examples. Talmud studies in non-religious public schools. Of course, this may be a very good thing. As someone that is very, I want everyone to learn Torah, but of course, I don't want it to be coerced on people in the way that is done in those coalition agreements. The chametz issue on Passover, that hospitals can decide to put someone to look inside the bags of people coming inside the hospital, Jews and Arabs, and check if there's bread in what they brought to their family patients. Issues of ground burial. Each one here will have the option which the government was trying to change to have more in a situation of a very little land. This is a problematic thing that will make us live in a country of dead instead of a country of living people. The public works on Shabbat. We're going to read in this portion of the week in Yitro that in the 10 commandments that we should honor the Shabbat, remember the Shabbat, but the question in what way it's going to be. NGOs that can come to schools, and of course gender separation in the public sphere. The third column is just a minute. I'm asked to make a change in the way I shared. Okay, here it is. So the third column is about demands that concern not only the people in Israel, but the diaspora Jews as well. So the grandchild clause in the law of return that is saying that we can, that the grandchildren of Jews, which are families of Jews, but not sons and daughters of a Jewish mother, will not be able to come to Israel and get immediate citizenship. So this is some kind of a changed view of who are the family of the Jewish people around the world. The overriding court's recognition of reform and conservative conversions in Israel and abroad, mostly the ones recognized here in Israel by the Ministry of Interiors. The annulment of the department, the Progressive Judaism department in the Diaspora Affairs Ministry, the reducing or the freezing of religious and ceremonial rights of women and non-Orthodox Jews at the Kotel that we were just talking about, and did a lot of noise and had a lot of media today. So all of those are examples of different things that are written in those coalition agreements. As we could see today, the situation is that one of the parties wants to give force to one of the promises they were given. So Prime Minister Netanyahu was talking as if he was surprised today, but this is something he agreed to in the coalition agreements, and all those things in the coalition agreements have dates. They're supposed to happen very quickly, and of course not everything will actually happen. As we could see today, not only the Prime Minister but also the Minister of the Diaspora and the Minister of Culture, they all came and said this can't happen so quickly, it can't happen in the way that it was offered. The Western Wall belongs to everyone. You have different Jews, that this place is dear to their hearts. But this would be our challenge nowadays, every day, to get up to see what's in the newspapers for today and what's going to be our battle for today, to make sure that that the parties understand there are different people here in Israel and in the Jewish world, and this government should serve and listen to everyone.
Shlomit, thank you very much. You mentioned several areas of concern. Gilad Malach, thank you for joining us. Do you agree with Shlomit's analysis? And is there one specific topic of all of those that she mentioned that concerns you the most? You're on mute.
Ofer, I can tell you that there are a lot of good reasons to be concerned. You might be concerned about the process of the ultra-Orthodox integration into the labor market because of the planned rise of budget for yeshiva students. You might be concerned for the democratic sphere of the State of Israel as a result of the automatic support of the ultra-Orthodox politicians in any initiative that will limit the Supreme Court. Or from the idea of a basic law that will say that studying Torah is one of the main aims of the state, although most of the Israelis don't agree on that. You might be concerned about the professionalism of civil servants and mental therapists from the plan to lower the academic demands in order to exempt ultra-Orthodox girls from the need to study in universities. But I am mostly concerned about long-term processes that might be taken as the result of changes in the ultra-Orthodox education system. Most of the sections in the coalition agreements of the ultra-Orthodox parties focus on the education system and have two major demands: more money and more autonomy, which means less regulation but more support. More money, more support, less regulation. The ultra-Orthodox school system in Israel is private, but unlike the private system in the United States, it gets a lot of public funding from the states, which of course reduces support from the public system. One of the ways to make changes in the ultra-Orthodox system is to condition the public funding it received and requires them to include secular studies like English, math, geography, history, and civics in their curriculum. But the current coalition plan is to do the opposite. Instead of conditional support, it will unconditionally raise the salary of ultra-Orthodox teachers, force municipalities to provide additional support of the Haredi schools, and to provide even more funding to additional programs in the ultra-Orthodox schools. But unlike any norms of governance, once they receive these budgets from the state, they would then be under full autonomy of the ultra-Orthodox self-regulation and not anymore under the formal regulation or oversight from the Ministry of Education. I'm worried about these planned actions because they are taking the wrong direction and will negatively affect not just the short term, but the long-term strength of Israel and its current status as a prosperous and democratic state.
Thank you. Thank you, Gilad. Shlomit, there are numerous parties in the governing coalition. 4 parties, 4 different, or 5 actually, if you consider Avi Maoz as a separate party. Do they all share the same goals in terms of changes in issues of religion and state? You're on mute.
No, they do not share the exact same opinions, but they have this covenant between them, those agreements that decide that their coalition is more important than their than the ideas and the ideology of each one apart. So the wish to govern, the wish to move ahead, the things that are similar in all their opinions, is now leading the way. What concerns me in that issue mostly is the fact that people are so much the dichotomy between the 2 parts of Israel is now can be cut not only politically and religiously, but in almost every aspect of life. If I'm gonna, we know that as complicated people, we usually have a few identities. I am a part of I'm a liberal Orthodox, but I'm also a part of the Jewish renewal field, and I'm a halachic person, but I'm also a feminist, and I have different identities and different systems of values that I follow. But the situation today is that if you say, if you know what I voted, you can almost say about me what are my religious beliefs and where in Israel do I live and what is my socio-economical status. And I think this is a very dangerous situation, that people are being that they think in a specific way, that they, and this is what's happening now, I think, to many of us, and especially to the Likud, to the secular and traditional voters of this government, and also modern Orthodox voters of this government, that some of them are feeling that they are going with the stream to something that is maybe different than their personal values. I can say this is maybe also a hopeful situation, because like today, that some of the ministries and some of the members of Knesset said, stop here, we cannot go with this a threat on the Western Wall that women going without a long sleeve, or someone playing a guitar in the Western Wall, and of course women who are taking a Torah stroll will be have a very big penalty, or go to a 6-month
prison.
In a prison, yes. Thanks. So this is something that they cannot think about, and as you know, we saw that the people from Shas had to stop and say, okay, we're going to wait with this, we're going to change our bill in certain ways, but I think it's a dangerous situation that people are stopping to think by their own course, and they need to straight, put their line together with their parties. So this is the situation.
Thank you. Gilad, there has been talk in Israel that all of this polarization and discourse and narrative that is going on in Israel right now is creating a bigger rift within society. And there's some concern that there could be damage done to the integration of Haredis into the workforce and into society. This implies that there has been actually some movement towards integration, that maybe this movement is now going to be to change course or even be stopped. Where have you seen this kind of progress on integration of Haredi, and what should our listeners be watching for in terms of potential reversals? Can this movement now suffer because of the current situation?
Yeah, so first of all, let's understand what took place in the last 2 decades. We saw a lot of governmental actions in order to promote integration, ultra-Orthodox, into the labor market. In terms of policies, we might define between sticks and carrots. There were some sticks, like, cutting budgets to children allowances that make men and women force them to integrate into the labor market. But usually the main tools were, let's say, positive tools like carrots, like building spatial frameworks for ultra-Orthodox in the army, in higher education, in vocational training, and etc. And also lowering the age of exemption from the army, making the ability to integrate earlier, and a lot of other actions, let's say positive actions. Now, we might say that we have a mixed result in this process of integration. We have more success regarding the ultra-Orthodox women. There was a jump in their participant rate. Regarding the men, we saw a progress. 20 years ago, just 1/3 of them were working. Now it's around 50%. But in the last 7 years, we saw a stability in their participant rate. We saw more ultra-Orthodox youngsters studying higher education. There was also efforts in the army, less successful. So it's mixed results regarding this process of integration. I just want to mention that at the last year that the Haredim were in the coalition, there was a bit more pressure on them. And we also have the last results that we have from 2022. There was a jump in the participation. After 7 years of stability, we saw an increase of the participation even of the ultra-Orthodox men. So these are the actions, and these are the results of the last 20 years. But we are afraid that now the current government taking a different direction. If I talked about sticks and carrots, the carrots now not given to people who integrate into the labor market, but are given to ultra-Orthodox men who are study Torah. So they will have more budget. The budget for yeshiva student will jump in 1.5 times than it used to be. There will be a special support for yeshiva students, kind of food stamps. So instead of supporting people to integrate, the current government invest in Torah studies and yeshiva students. So the motivation, and we saw that people are motivated by these tools of sticks and carrots. But if the carrots are towards continue to studying Torah, and the values of the community is to continue to study, I'm afraid that this increase that we saw last year will change its direction, and we'll see a decrease in the participation into the labor market.
So to follow up on what you just said, if you listen to coalition leaders, including maybe especially from the Haredi parties, they say that all they want to do is retain the status quo on these issues. They don't want to change. They just want to keep things as they were. How do you explain the difference between how they see their policies and so many Israelis see? Because there's clearly a difference in the way that people are looking at this. And so in your view, what is the reality? Are they really looking for a revolution or only to safeguard and protect their vested interests?
So I can tell you that when this government was sworn in, I thought, I'm dealing with the integrating the ultra-Orthodox since 2009. So most of the years, the ultra-Orthodox were part of the government. So I'm used to it. So I thought it will be like it was the last decade, meaning that they are gaining some things for their communities, some financial support, but things as usual. But things are not as usual. They are demanding all the examples that I gave about the budget for yeshivot, the things that I told you about the autonomy of the education system, and again, much more financial support for the private educational system are new things. So it's not just remaining or having back the status quo. This is one thing. But another thing is connected to the things that are changing throughout the years. I will give you some example for a claim that the Ultra-Orthodox Party says we just want to bring back the status quo regarding the exemption from the army. They said, we have an exemption for years, we want to do it unconditioned, and we don't want to have targets, some people that will have to go to the army, some Ultra-Orthodox. But the point is that 20 years ago, the Ultra-Orthodox youngsters were just 10% of each quota. Nowadays, they are almost 20%. So if you will keep the status quo in 10 years, in 20 years, they will be 25%, 30%. Until when can you keep the status quo?
Right. Sobering thought. Before we take some questions from the audience, who please should type your questions in the chat, I'd like to ask Shlomit, from the perspective of those who support diverse Jewish practices as you presented yourself, are there any points of light? Are there any reasons for optimism, either in the short or the long term?
So one of them is not everything is going to happen. Some of those demands, some of those promises, and we can already see this, are not according to schedule, and they are not going to actually happen. We can see that people are fighting. People are making themselves heard. NGOs, activists, the demonstrations every Shabbat evening. The public opinion stands, and it's not okay with what's happening. So, and this has some kind of influence. The government cannot rush forward when they have such a great battle in their backyard. So this is one thing. I think another thing is that sometimes things cannot happen with the leadership, but they can happen from the bottom up. Even in the ultra-Orthodox community Gilad was talking about, maybe in former years we were trying to work with the leadership, with the institutions, with the people in parliament that are representing this community. Now we will have to work with the parents, with the community in their homes. The place for the local authorities is much more important. Some of the things that cannot be done by the main government can be done by the local authorities that can help people and try to behave according to the specific audience and their voters, their audience. And this is something we're seeing in the field of religion and state. In Israel, a lot of the changes that are happening bottom up, are happening in the local authorities. The changes are because activists are working towards them, and the courts are coming after the reality, and also the governments comes after the local authorities. We saw one of the examples as of today. And another thing, which is not an optimist thing, but it is some kind of a way to look at the future. It's actually a concern, but I think there is a limit to what can happen, because if the ultra-Orthodox will ask and actually change too much, secular and traditional and some of the modern Orthodox people here in Israel may say, we're not willing anymore to be to give our work and our children to the army, and see all this society as one society. So it's a big concern that our society might not have enough of a common story and common wish to be the same. But maybe it's hopeful if people will understand this and stop and limit the demands to something that can be that people can take among themselves, and not be so extreme to things that will not, that the answer to them in the public will say, we don't see ourselves anymore as one people.
Yeah, thank you. In the interest of allowing as many questions as possible, we do have a lot of questions in the chat. I'll just ask you some brief questions. I'd like to have very, very brief answers so we can get as many questions as possible. First question is a follow-up question to you, Shlomit. We have one of our participants says, I read today that 40% of first graders are from the ultra-Orthodox sector. I'm wondering what percentage of Israelis classify themselves as religiously observant, and has that number changed significantly in recent decades or years?
So we're talking on 13% of the society that are ultra-Orthodox, and another 11 which are Orthodox. And we of course have more that are traditional, which is not a definite number, and the traditional identity is quite, it's not very distinct.
Maybe, Shlomit, I want to add the fact that it was a wrong statement of this minister.
Yeah, it's about 25 now. We're talking one of every.
Yeah, it's one. It's about 22% first graders. So it was a huge mistake of this minister. And of course, as Shlomit says, if the ultra-Orthodox society is 13% and the first graders are 22%, we see the trend, but it's not 40%.
In terms of the birth rate,
society is a very young one.
In terms of birth rate in this sector of society, we definitely see an upward trend long term.
Yes, because they are a very young society. So when we look, and they have a lot of children. So of course, when we look on 2065, we see them as 1/3 of the society.
Gilad, another question from one of our participants. The recent gathering of self-described religious left-wingers was impressive. A lot of people on the left wing consider themselves religious. One of the speakers at that conference was Rabbi Ovadia Yosef's daughter, who is a well-known feminist in Israel. And a group of women from Shas recently asked Minister Deri not to overturn the tax on sugar drinks because of their concern about their kids getting diabetes. Are those hopeful signs, and how can this sort of trend be intensified?
Let's say that you mentioned the fact that the daughter of Harav Ovadia Yosef is sliding to the left. Let's don't forget the fact that her father, Harav Ovadia Yosef, traditionally was supported, the compromise of two-state solution, and supported and said that this is the right solution most of the years. So the change that took place within the ultra-Orthodox society was to turn to the right. I mean, the rabbis of 20, 30 years ago were in the centers, or even 10 to the left. The politicians, for example, Aryeh Deri, the leader of Shas, 20 years ago, he was tending to the left. 25 years ago, he was supporting Oslo Agreement, was a minister in Rabin's government, and all of them tend to the right, and the people, of course, itself.
And it's not only the Ultra-Orthodox; it's also the modern Orthodox, the party of the modern Orthodox, of the Zionist religious party, was until the end of the 70s was in the middle, or maybe the end of the 60s. They were in the middle. They were the ones the government tried to go with, whether they were right wing or left wing. So
that ties into another question we have in our chat, which connects exactly to this point. We have a listener saying, I am concerned about the dichotomy developing that the right in Israel owns Judaism and the left owns democracy. Can either of you comment on this? Is the right about religion and the left about democracy? Can Israel be a Jewish and democratic state with this kind of dichotomy between the two sides of the political spectrum?
This is a great concern. I was talking about it before. The dichotomy, the way we need to identify ourselves religiously and ideologically, and according to the party we want to vote for in every aspect of life. This is of course, we have people who are religious and left wing, and we have people who are secular and right wing. This is not an exact description of the Israel society, but this is the way we're going to. This is the majority, and this is, even if it's not the exact way things actually are, this is what the leadership is talking about. This is what we are drawing, what the leadership is drawing.
I can add that most of the Israelis support the idea of a Jewish and democratic state, but most of the right wingers will fight on the Jewish aspect of the state of Israel, and most of the center and right and the left wing will fight on the democratic values or sphere of the state of Israel, and that's the difference.
Right. And that goes again to the question of separation between religion and state and all of its inherent problems. Final question to both of you, because we do have 4 or 5 more minutes, and then we will turn this over. How did this coalition win the election when there is a large population of non-Orthodox in Israel? How come this is the coalition that actually won?
Because people felt that the story and the identity of their being a right wing is more important for them than the questions of the way of observance. First of all, a lot of them are traditional. They feel Judaism is an important part of their life, but they are not ultra-Orthodox. They are not Orthodox at all. They want to go as families to the sea on Shabbat, maybe, and they go to see soccer on Shabbat, and maybe after shul. So this is something that is people that are living in both worlds. And I think they are now in a big problem, because it's not what they planned. What happened is not what they planned. It's not what they believe in.
And not what they signed up for.
And yes, and a lot of them, I think, sit very uncomfortably in their seats. And I would say, but for many of them, the changes they want, the judicial reform that's happening here, is more important for them than religion and state issues. So they sit tight and close their mouths and don't demonstrate against their own, because this is more important to them. But I don't think they're happy. I don't think, and this is something that's gonna blow.
I, I can,
Gilad,
I
final
can,
words on this issue?
yeah, I can add that this government, the right wingers succeeded in getting their demands. The ultra-Orthodox succeeded in getting their demands, and the supporters of great reforms of the Supreme Courts get their demands. But it means that people who doesn't belong to the right wing are really satisfied from the extreme demands, and the non-ultra-Orthodox are happy with the demands of the ultra-Orthodox parties. So until now, we are just in the beginning of this government. Each part of these sectors satisfies from his own achievement, but we might see, and this is one of the lights towards the future. In a few months, we will see the differences that some people, and we will see it the first time when the annual budget will have to pass. We will see these differences between the extreme right wingers, the ultra-Orthodox parties, the people who wants to promote reform, and we might see some crisis connected to that.
And already they have many of the ministers, the people of the Likud did not get jobs they wanted because the other parties got many of them.
Had to be accommodated.
So, there is, the feelings are very, they may come up, and we may see a battle.
I want to thank you both, and I will hand things over now to the Jewish Federations of North America's President and CEO, Eric Fingerhut. And maybe, Eric, you can address a lot of issues and concerns among our participants about what can diaspora Jews do in light of this, I would say, rather bleak situation as described by our panelists. What can we as diaspora Jews do in Israel?
So, Ofer, thank you for participating and moderating for us. I know this has been a difficult conversation, and you've done, as always, an excellent job. Thank you for all your good work in Israel on behalf of the Jewish United Front of Chicago and the entire Jewish Federation system. Thank you, Gilad and Shlomit, for your contributions, and thank you to the Israel Democracy Institute once again for partnering with the Jewish Federations of North America. I think there's two answers, Ofer, to the question that has been asked. One is there are practical steps that we can take, both that individual federations like yours in Chicago have been taking to be supportive of organizations in Israel that are promoting religious pluralism, and from the ground up, as Shlomit said, are doing this important work of bridge building. And I'll mention again what was mentioned at the beginning of the webinar by our chair, Julie Platt, that we, of course, have a coalition of the willing. The Coalition of Federations now numbers about 30 federations that we call IREP, the Israel Religious Expression Platform, that is pooling resources and supporting organizations in Israel, because this is ultimately Israelis that have to lead this charge, but we can provide them with support to advance these important issues. And we invite other federations to learn more about IREP and to join with their fellow federations in this effort. A second thing I do think, Ofer, that I want to say is, I know that many of us are concerned about how we can express our views and our concerns without them being viewed as anti-Israel or being used by those who would delegitimize Israel. And in that regard, again, I want to quote our chair, Julie Platt, who was on this webinar at the very beginning. At our board meeting this past weekend, she said the following. She said, the support of the Jewish Federations of North America for the state of Israel is unconditional and eternal, full stop. Any concerns we have with government policies or questions we raise with government officials must be heard with this first principle firmly in mind. So I want to urge not only those that are listening to this webinar, but those who want to communicate concerns, you don't have to use these exact words, but to emulate this advice, this good advice that came from our board chair, because I do think that we need to make clear that as Julie said, our support is unbreakable, is eternal. We're blessed to live in the era of the sovereign Jewish state. We are excited to come to Israel for the Israel 75 GA. Thousands and thousands of North American Jews will be there to celebrate with Israel the remarkable historical moment. But we have every right and responsibility as Israel's the Jewish state to communicate our views clearly and respectfully. And we, of course, will continue to do that as well. I want to, again, not only say thank you, but also remind everyone that the next webinar in this series will be on February 16th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. That webinar will look at the new research and mapping in the field of shared society between Jewish and Arab citizens of Israel, another issue that has come to the forefront not only during the last government, but now, of course, again, as the new government begins its work. Advocate Torpaz, Shlomi said at the very beginning, referred to the fact that this week in our Torah reading, we come to the revelation at Sinai, the Aseret HaDibrot, the giving, the receiving of the 10 Commandments, the receiving of the Torah, as traditional Jews believe, at Mount Sinai. And it always reminds me of the old joke that when a Jew sees another and you don't remember exactly where you met, or maybe don't even remember the name, you say, well, what do we say to each other? We say, well, we met at Sinai. And the joke about meeting at Sinai is actually based on a great rabbinic midrash, a great rabbinic interpretation that says that it wasn't only the Jews that left Egypt and came to the foot of Mount Sinai who were there that day, but in fact, every Jew who ever lived or ever will live was at the foot of Mount Sinai and had a place at that great Kehillah, that great congregation, and had a place in the receiving and received the Torah. And so as we move forward on these challenging but important issues, we reaffirm that it's our commitment at the Jewish Federations of North America and with all of our communities in North America to ensure that all Jews have a place at the foot of Mount Sinai and feel that that Torah is theirs and that they also receive it. So as we read the Torah this week, let's all remember that we have a place at the foot of Mount Sinai, and that will surely be true, Bezrat Hashem, with God's help, in the remarkable Jewish state of Israel. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you at the next webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you.